Good morning, everyone. This is Luda Kopkina with GAI Insights, where we rate daily AI news as essential, important, and optional, saving you time in your busy day. Today, we have a treat. We have Kevin Petrie joining us as a guest reviewer. Kevin has been a great participant in this show and in our learning lab with wonderful insights. He's currently vice president of BARC, or vice president of research, and that's where he focuses on data, business intelligence, and analytics, with a focus on GenAI. He teaches, writes a lot. Some of the articles I very highly recommend that he wrote. And he teaches the early adopters in GenAI. So welcome, Kevin.
It's really great to be here. I'm honored. Thank you. Good to see you, Paul.
Hi, Kevin.
Great. So we have a number of articles today. Spanning from AIG to a pretty comprehensive article about how you deal with small language models versus LLMs, and how they can support your work, to supercharging product portfolio management from McKinsey. So lots of things to discuss. Let's start with the first article. Ankash, please.
Thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from NVIDIA. NVIDIA has launched a state-of-the-art multimodal GenAI model development with NVIDIA NeMo.
Yes, an interesting development, end-to-end platform that NVIDIA has been developing now into video and 7 and 12 times optimizations. So, Adam, what do you think?
When I was thinking about this before the show, good morning, everyone, by the way. But when I was thinking about it earlier, I was probably on the fence between optional and important, but leaning towards optional. And I think I'm going to say important. We heard when NVIDIA made an announcement now a couple months ago that they had some new things coming. This was one of those announcements. We've been sort of waiting to see. We've seen use cases recently where some of their other things, you can see they're starting to get it out into production. And this is, I feel, really where the rubber is going to hit the road and where they're going to start taking off in terms of GenAI adoption on their software platform. I went and clicked through and took a look at NeMo, and it's just very user-friendly, very easy. They're going to make it so that people can effectively build, set up, configure, and ultimately deploy their own models just all through the browser, relying on NVIDIA Cloud and the NVIDIA architecture. So it's worth people at least being aware of. So I'm going to bump it up to an important rating.
So maybe, Adam, we talk about the two things that they're introducing here, the tokenizer and the curator. Maybe you can say a couple of words.
The second one, the curator, isn't actually available yet, which is part of why I was leaning towards optional, because they talk a lot about it. And honestly, but for me, this got a little too deep technically and got into a little too much of comparisons and charts and almost like a research article at that point. So that was also in some ways having me want to downgrade it. But the news about NeMo, I felt was important.
Okay.
So, yeah, I didn't even quite get into all of the details about exactly what it's doing or how it's the technique is working. Perhaps you caught a little more than I did.
Okay. What do you think, Paul? Kevin, what's your take on this?
Yeah, jump in, Kevin.
So I agree with Adam. I think important is fair. I made a comment on some news from NVIDIA a couple weeks ago on this show, and it was as a member of the audience, I was a little dismissive of some of their moves into the software space. But I think that given their strength in the GPU layer, their incredible resources, they I think will become a real force to be reckoned with on the software side in the LLM layer and application layer. And this shows that they're giving it some real thought. So it's important for folks to be aware of. I agree with Adam.
I mean, I would add, I think the market cap just passed Apple, at least for a bit this week. You know, these guys are cranking. They're taking over the world at one level. And I do think that, we're working on buyer's guides, Kevin. And one thing that's become very clear there is that they've got a number of offerings here. And companies looking for LLM-based applications, which we're calling enterprise intelligence applications, need to consider at least put these guys on the short list because they have a lot of offerings out there. So I'd support important as well.
Yeah, and Jensen Huang's been very visible
Yes.
with other partners in the software layer. He was a star appearance on both the Snowflake and Databricks stages during their user conferences earlier this year. So I think folks are very aware and starting to get engaged with NVIDIA in that capacity.
Yeah, so on the technical side, Curate is not available yet, but I was really taken into how they're doing it. So Curator is essentially looking at the application and trying to optimize the usage of the hardware. And as a result, they're giving 7x with the performance with the curator versus without the curator. So this is where the power of software and hardware combination comes through, right, for NVIDIA. And tokenize is another technique that they are putting the video into tokens without reducing sort of video tokens and then decomposing them at the end without losing quality, actually enhancing quality, and that they're getting 12x improvement in runtime. So those numbers are pretty impressive. So yeah, okay, important it is.
And Luda, I'll just add that it's interesting. This is in some ways, technology-wise, at least in theory, similar to that adaptive caching we saw for the video transformers last night from Meta. Yeah. So there's sort of a trend around having this layer of intelligence that's determining the best way to find the balance to get the best output for the amount of time you're putting in.
Yeah, quite a development. So important it is. Let's take the next article, Ankash, please.
Okay, the next one comes from AID, and it talks about how AID is leaning on GenAI to speed underwriting.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you think?
I think this is optional with a couple of asterisks about facts worth noting. I was on the vendor side for a long time, and we always found that in the data space, the insurance vertical, that insurance subsegment, was always pretty mature about how they're handling data. So it's not surprising that they're making these moves. I think the use cases they're addressing are, I won't say pedestrian because we're still early in the overall adoption phase for GenAI, but somewhat predictable. These are things they should be doing. And so that's good. What I'm pleased to see in the announcement is that you have a CEO talking to investors and giving board level visibility to data modernization, to data preparation, data engineering. Those phrases are not sexy to boards as GenAI is, but boy, they matter. And so these folks are taking, I think, data preparation and governance seriously as they need to, and bringing visibility to that.
Right, and they divested quite a bit of their operations. So what they are doing, and this is really worth mentioning, they're rewiring the company around data essentially, and optimizing the whole structure of the underlying data for the future performance of the overall company. That's quite notable.
It is, and it looks like they're generating some real business results from it. So it's good to see.
Yeah.
So not news breaking, but important to be aware of.
I'll throw in
Adam.
I'll throw in one little addition on our website. We have all the history of the ratings, and you can search it by keyword. And so I just went in and searched for underwriting because I thought we'd heard about this use case before, and we have going back all the way to April and then August and October, Swiss Re, Hiscox, and Manulife. All using it for this exact use case. So I agree with Kevin on this one as well. This is great, and some of the details are nice, but it's I think the word you used was pedestrian a bit in terms of a use case at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, optional it is. Next one, Ankash.
Okay, the next one is a research paper which talks about small language models in the era of large language models.
Paul, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I skimmed this. I didn't do a deep dive on it. I thought it was interesting. It's research. It's optional. It fits in the trend that we continue to see lots of innovation on the small model side. But I had it as optional for our AI lead.
Okay, I actually put it as important.
Good.
As a
Right.
let me make this case and see whether Adam and Kevin agree or whatnot. So this is all about SLMs. It's pretty comprehensive. It's very long. It's 60 plus pages, but it's pretty comprehensive. So they first of all argue that SLMs are here to stay, that some people, especially for your own intelligence purposes, will want to have their own SLMs. And then they go through, let's essentially go and understand how you can build an SLM from scratch, from LLM, from quantization. So they go through the techniques, right? Then they look at how do you deploy it and what applications it can take. Then they collect all of the small SLMs with less than 7 billion parameters and go essentially look at their architectures, training techniques, and the like, and compare them. Then they say, here's LLMs, here are SLMs, how they can work together and resolve some of the challenges of LLMs. And then they go through the techniques of evaluating hallucination, privacy concerns, so trustworthiness of the SLM. So for me, it's a long read. You probably don't read all of it, right? But keeping it in the top back pocket, especially if you're interested in building your own SLM, is why I'm thinking important. What do you think, Kevin, Adam?
I think you might have talked me into that, Luda. I think important makes sense. Agree with the fundamentals pointing to the rise of small language models because they are more efficient. They don't require as much computational investment. And ultimately, the way for companies to get real competitive, sustainable competitive advantage for language models is not to get something off the shelf and apply it to public data, but rather to apply it to their own curated small data. And I think being aware of the options to do that really helps. It's if you start with a specialized small language model and apply it to your data, that's easier implementation wise and in terms of configuring RAG or fine tuning than doing it with an off the shelf standard LLM. So yeah, SLMs matter, and this is a good walk through some of the options there.
Adam, okay with important or optional for you?
I remain slightly unconvinced. This chart and the 1-2 up that Ankash was showing before, that sort of the map of all the different applications of smart language models, I think those alone might make this worth looking at versus reading. But I'm just not convinced. Like, I feel like it's still too early in the life cycle maturity of the vast majority of the companies out there, that they're more looking at trying to do something like AIG's done. Small language models are so far like away from their focus right now that I could stand with Paul on this one and force you to be democratic about it and weigh in with the chocolate, and that'll be 2-2. Oh, we'll go to Ankash for the tiebreaker.
Important it is as a high. Okay. All right. I am going autocratic on this one. Okay. Sounds good. let's go. Next one.
The next one comes from Anthropic, and Anthropic has partnered with Palantir, and they will be using Claude AI models for US government intelligence and defense operations.
Okay, Kevin, what do you think?
Okay, I think optional, again with an asterisk. There's not too much detail here. I think these are the kinds of things that organizations should be doing anyway to use GenAI. It is notable that this is the public sector, this is the government, and it's doing it for defense and intelligence activities. So that's important. I think our government should be doing that. This is obviously more of a U.S. perspective I'm providing here. There is somewhat of an AI arms race between the U.S. and China, and the U.S. defense and intelligence sector should be doing these things and getting more savvy about how to use AI and GenAI to its advantage. So it's, I think, important to know as a headline. I'm not sure that it's important reading in itself. I'd say it's optional.
Okay. Paul, Adam, views on this? No?
I had optional as well.
Optional. Okay. Optional it is. But we've reviewed an article
just
about
honorable mention for Defense Llama LLM, that we just talked about last night.
yeah, we just talked about yesterday. Yeah. So it's interesting.
It's a trend. It's good to see Anthropic keeping up with.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Optional it is. Let's go next, Ankash.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from McKinsey, and it talks about supercharging product portfolio performance with GenAI.
All right. This is Adam, and it's a very interesting, comprehensive, I thought, article about. It's a complex topic, and they did a good job of talking about it. What do you think about it, Adam?
I think I'm gonna weigh in on important for this. The vast number of companies that the use case of how you manage a product portfolio is so huge. Additionally, I think there's ways that you could sort of apply it to other things indirectly that are of a similar nature. And the concept, as they described, that there's all of the external complexities around the products and the variants of what you're selling, and all the internal ones around dependencies and what you need to make them, and the markets for the products. And maybe you have products that no one wants to buy, or maybe you have too many products and it's too hard to manage. And there's so much that goes into that. And I don't personally know how much thought leadership's already been done, but they make a pretty good case for why generative AI can have a big impact here. And down towards the bottom and all through it, there are some really interesting graphs, some useful insights. There was one especially, that one there is really cool. And as you scroll down, it'll update the graph. Just keep scrolling, and you'll see it like highlighting different points and sort of illustrating how visually you can use a large language model to get analysis and really help to understand what's going on with your business in new and unique ways. So I'm not sure I'd go essential. It is a very, very heavy article, and it's very, very specific in terms of the use case. But quite possibly, I'd probably be leaning between important and essential on this one. And this graph here is really interesting in itself, and the progression over time. This in itself is probably worth an important rating to me. As you scroll again, you'll see the timeline update as it moves through the history of generative AI models up through agent GenAI, which is about where we are now.
What do you think we're going on important here, Paul, Kevin?
Well, I find myself agreeing. Once again, I think it is important. It's not quite essential. It's focused on one business function, but it's a business function that applies to multiple verticals. So broad applicability. It's a level of detail that, like Adam said, can apply not just to this specific use case, but have implications for AI leaders overall. I thought it was pretty good. I also enjoy graphics that build and do what they're doing here with the scroll. It really helps people absorb the material. So yeah, important looks good to me.
Yeah, I'm actually with Lucinda. We'll do.
There we go.
And it's from personal experience, because I was at GE, and we actually worked with one business to look at their SKUs, and they had a huge bunch. So that's like thousands, 10,000s of them. And as a result, the inventory was high. So there was issues of delivering and the speed of delivery was really bad. And so what we did, we reduced that to the hundreds of core products. And this was motors business. So it was a lot of screaming in the business. But to do that, and then we essentially made processes to build custom motors on these core things. So we did exactly that graph that Adam is showing, the blue, or this article, and Adam was highlighting the blue, but it took us months to do it. So now you can, if you can make that graph with the revenue and the margin, and you can make those decisions consciously of how to prune, and make your inventory essentially go away. This is massive impact on any business that does this. So I think it is essential for me. Paul, back essential?
I'm gonna. I do like the graph. I was more with Kevin on important, but Luda, I'll support the team on this one.
You know, I can support essential, actually, to echo what Kevin said, which is it's essential people understand how to write a good article like this and actually use these visuals in a compelling way.
Yes.
It's a really good example of how to make it long, but keep it engaging, keep it informative, use a lot of visual information to convey what ultimately ends up being the visual power of LLM. So I'll back you on this one, Luda.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I'm now torn, right? Because if it's just for writing a good article, that's not. I'm actually suggesting essential because of an impact that this type of an application.
Luda, find your chalk, find your John Sfiocchi.
All right, essential it is. Thank you.
There we go.
Find your dictator.
Well, I'm from the Soviet Union, remember?
Yeah.
So I have both in me. That's the problem. Okay, essential it is. So let's, and I want to go back to, and thanks, Lucinda, for prompting. I want to go back to Shish on the SLMs, as a small business, small language model, SLMs.
Oh, okay.
So it's a good advice. He's saying, look, you would probably, to Adam's point, not jump into the small language model immediately. Start with prompt engineering, then RAG, then fine tuning, and then you're there, right? You will build an SLM. So totally true. But knowing all these techniques is useful. So great. So let's see whether we have a board for today. Yep, we have one essential, one important, and two optionals. Oh, two important.
Two important, Luda. Yeah.
Two important and two optionals.
Now, Luda, I know we've had no hitters where it's been optional, but if we ever had a night with 5 articles where it ended up on EIO,
That would be great.
it's bound to happen eventually.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, the audience, for the great discussion. Kevin, it was lovely to have you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And happy Friday, everyone.
Luda, we have a couple announcements. Our Monday Learning Lab is going to be on deep fakes. So we have a vendor that specializes in detecting deep fakes. So it's something that I and others really thought we'd see a lot more for the presidential election, but we haven't. But it's a really important topic for that. Second is our team continues to make lots of progress on our buyer's guide. And November 26th at noon, noon Eastern, we're having a overview of that. And it's been very interesting, Kevin, getting feedback. Last year we did buyer's guide and people were like, how do you spell AI and LLM? And this year it is different. People are really thirsting for information, both about buyers and use cases. And I think next year is going to be an explosive year in terms of buying and deploying. And the last announcement is that we are continuing to make really good progress on, we've been talking about this for a year, but building a database of GenAI use cases. So the company, which vendor they're using, which use case they have, certainly a link to the URL that's the source, and ideally some of the financial metrics here. And a little bit, Adam, to your point, you know, it takes a while, but boy, there's so many, Kevin. Once you get that put together, starting to find 4 or 5 in a vertical or by vendor is really powerful, and they're not out there a lot. So we're really trying to add some more value to the community from some curation on that.
And so that's part of the buyer's guide, the use case inventory?
No, the use case inventory, we're going to have some of it in the buyer's guide, and then we're going to have some of it on the website, and then the full list we'll have to our customers. Yeah.
Excellent. That sounds like a great resource.
Yeah. Thank you. And we're looking for best practices for other companies who've done. I think Gartner may have. Anyway, I'm surprised more. Anyway, if you other sources like that, but it's very exciting, and it's one of these things. Last finishing up, it's once you see it, Kevin, you're like, holy crap, this is going to be really useful. So we got Parika over in India who's spending almost full time now on it. So very excited.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'm not sure what happened to my camera, but hopefully you can still hear me.
Okay. But Kevin,
Yeah,
it's the
well,
way
but
that it's
thank
the
you.
guest reader here.
A lot of exciting
Good.
news. Sign up for the buyer's guide and sign up for the live event on the 26th at noon.
Good.
Right.
I
Happy
looks like I
Friday,
will be there.
everyone.
I'll put it on my calendar.
Yeah,
Good.
please do. Happy Friday. See you on Monday. Have
Okay.
a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.